A college athlete who shattered the record books, made millions of dollars breaking NCAA rules, and partied like a rock star with the hottest celebrities on the planet. This is the story of Johnny Manziel. Manziel's journey began in Tyler, Texas, where he was born on December 6, 1992. His parents, Michelle and Paul, worked hard to raise Johnny and his younger sister, Mary, with support and love. At the young age of 2, Johnny displayed incredible hand-eye coordination, swinging a 3-foot-long golf club like a miniature Tiger Woods, and sending plastic golf balls soaring over his backyard pool and fences. By the time he was 9, he was hitting baseballs so far over the left field fence that the Little League coaches had to erect a taller one to contain his power. He was a hyper-competitive kid with a natural knack for sports. His father wanted Johnny to build character through sports, so he enrolled him at Tivy High School in Kerrville, Texas. In high school, Manziel played both football and baseball. In fact, he even got drafted as a shortstop by the San Diego Padres in 2014. But after graduating from high school, he decided to devote himself solely to the gridiron. The coaching style at Tivy was very disciplined and structured, resembling military training. His coach, Mark Smith, said in a 2016 interview, "He was a great kid. He had a caring heart, always tried to put his teammates before himself, was great with kids, particularly special needs kids. He went out of his way to work with the younger youth in the Kerrville area." It was at Tivy High School where Manziel's journey towards becoming a football legend began. He started as a receiver for the varsity team and transitioned to quarterback for his junior year. His play style was modeled after Brett Favre and Vince Young. As his talents progressed, he began to receive press and was featured in columns written by sports writers. Things were quickly transitioning away from him being just a talented kid to potentially something much more serious. Manziel reached incredible stats, including 2,903 passing yards, 1,544 rushing yards, and a total of 55 touchdowns. In his senior year, he proved his leadership and abilities, amassing 3,609 passing yards, 1,674 rushing yards, and an astonishing 77 touchdowns. Alongside his remarkable achievements, Manziel's charismatic and determined personality propelled his status as a football prospect. Named as a District 28 4A MVP, Manziel's high school legacy was set with a ton of recognition, including Class 4A First Team All-State and the prestigious Mr. Texas Football Award, earning himself the everlasting nickname Johnny Football. As mentioned, Manziel modeled his game around Vince Young. The reason was because Johnny was a massive Texas Longhorns fan growing up. His childhood dream was to play for the University of Texas. He was often seen in a Longhorn t-shirt or sweater, so it seemed to be his destiny to play for them. But he didn't receive an offer from them. Instead, Johnny Manziel accepted a full scholarship from the University of Texas A&M Aggies in 2011. Traditionally, the Longhorns were held in much higher prestige than the Aggies were. But Manziel was up for the challenge and arrived on campus with a chip on his shoulder. When Manziel arrived at Texas A&M, the program was going through a major shift. Historically, the Aggies competed in the Big 12, a conference more known for its basketball stardom than its football program. But in 2012, the Aggies moved to the SEC, the premier conference in college football. And with a new coach, Kevin Sumlin, taking over, there wasn't going to be any bias that dictated team roles. The Aggies had just lost their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, to the NFL draft, and it was known that the team was going to anoint a new starter. And against the odds, Johnny Manziel won the job as a redshirt freshman. However, shortly after winning his job, the young quarterback found himself in the midst of some legal trouble. He was arrested for causing a disturbance at a nightclub. He put himself in deeper water by providing his fake ID to the police. Eventually, he admitted in court that he didn't provide the right information to the police, which led to him being charged with a lesser offense. The more serious charges, related to having a fake driver's license and getting into a fight, were dropped when he pled guilty in this case. Manziel had an otherwise clean record at this point, and his coaches ensured fans and media that the incident was not a reflection of his character. But it was just the beginning for young Johnny Football. Manziel made his much-anticipated debut on home field against a stacked Florida Gators team. Though it wasn't entirely his fault, the Gators won the game by a score of 20-17. Offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury drew up a game plan with the intention of sheltering the quarterback in his first college game. Manziel threw for 173 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions. But the Aggie student body didn't give Johnny the benefit of the doubt. When he got back home, Manziel's lawn was covered in "for sale" signs, a gesture that indicated that he had yet to earn the respect of the school. Manziel describes the reaction as his "welcome to F in the SEC" moment. But Kingsbury shifted his plans going into the team's second game against SMU. Instead of sheltering the freshman, he gave Johnny Football the opportunity to redeem himself. And the 19-year-old did not disappoint. In his second start, Manziel passed for 294 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions, while also rushing for 124 yards and an additional 2 touchdowns. The Aggies annihilated their opponents 48-3. Then, 2 weeks later, Manziel passed for 453 yards and 3 touchdowns, while rushing for 104 yards and a touchdown, beating the University of Arkansas 58-10. His 557 total yards broke the all-time SEC record, previously owned by Archie Manning. Shortly after, he broke his own record, amassing 576 total yards against Louisiana Tech. His play was nothing short of spectacular. Manziel wasn't just proving he could win, he was absolutely dominating. His style was dynamic. Johnny Football was electrifying the crowd by dancing around defenders in the backfield and acrobatically completing passes downfield. He was so fast that he would cut through the defense for huge chunks of yards in the blink of an eye. It's hard to think of a player that has ever made college football look as easy as Manziel did during his freshman season. Meanwhile, his reputation off of the field was gaining notoriety. Plenty of photos of the new quarterback drinking heavily at frat parties were circulating around campus on social media platforms. But as long as Johnny Football was winning, no one seemed too concerned about how he conducted himself away from football. In fact, his partying ways actually made him more endearing to his fans. For example, after a photo of Manziel drinking a beer in a Scooby-Doo costume went public, fans piled into Kyle Stadium dressed like Scooby-Doo in support. He showed up to a game against Mississippi State hungover after a night of partying and still led A&M to a decisive victory. Watching footage of him killing it on the field with a major hangover is impressive to say the least. Most people can barely muster up enough energy to walk outside to grab the mail, never mind play D1 football like a legend. His coaches were well aware of his bad habits, but he was playing so well that they didn't want to interrupt his momentum. Eventually, on November 10th, 2012, Manziel's Stardom received national attention due to a performance against the University of Alabama. Entering the game, Bama was the top-ranked team in the nation, led by legendary head coach Nick Saban. But Manziel wasn't intimidated in the slightest. The kid was made for big moments. He came into town and stunned the Crimson Tide, winning the game 29-24. The entire time, Johnny Football was arrogantly trash-talking both the Bama players and their fans. He backed up his loud personality with even louder play. Upon his return to A&M, he was swarmed by thousands of fans chanting his name and demanding autographs. It was a lot to take in. Manziel was genuinely frightened. The attention that he was receiving as a 19-year-old freshman was second to none in college football history. He wasn't just a sports star, Johnny Football was becoming a cultural icon. By the end of the season, Manziel earned himself the coveted Heisman Trophy. The award is the most prestigious honor in college football. Each season, it is given to the best player in the entire nation, but Manziel was the first ever freshman to win the Heisman. In the world of college football, there's an unwritten rule that players had to earn their stripes, and that major awards were given to veterans who had served more time in their programs. However, in the case of Johnny Football, they made an exception. His resume was complete. He led his team to win the Cotton Bowl, beat the top-ranked team, and had the numbers to boot. On top of that, Manziel had a bigger fan base than the rest of college football combined. For the NCAA, the business opportunity of endorsing Manziel as the Heisman was too lucrative to even consider any of the other candidates. In 2013, the NCAA still had a rule that prevented college athletes from earning money while competing for their program. It was a highly controversial rule considering how much the NCAA was earning off of its athletes. In Manziel's case, Texas A&M was raking in enormous sums of money thanks to the quarterback's stardom. Adidas was selling millions of dollars of Aggie's jerseys with Manziel's number 2 on them. Estimates indicated that Texas A&M's exposure in the media was worth around $37 million, thanks to the attention Manziel brought to the university. And in 2012, the Texas A&M Foundation received over $740 million in donations, significantly more than in any previous year. The success of the football team under Manziel's leadership resulted in costly upgrades to Kyle Field, so A&M could earn more fortunes in the future. Cliff Kingsbury received a head coaching job at Texas Tech, while Kevin Sumlin earned a huge pay raise from the Aggies. Meanwhile, Johnny Football, being the reason for the massive spike in earnings, hadn't earned himself a dime. To no surprise, he was bitter about it, and who could blame him? But during Super Bowl week in Miami, a sports memorabilia trader offered the quarterback thousands of dollars to sign autographs at a secret event. Manziel, being a rebel, wasn't going to pass on the opportunity. When Manziel realized that he could easily earn money just by signing autographs, it led him down a slippery slope. He was showing up to paid events and executing big-time operations in secrecy. His sudden fame and success seemed to make him feel invincible. Before he knew it, Manziel was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he was living a lavish lifestyle with his new earnings. Everyone wanted a piece of him. He was partying with America's biggest stars, such as Drake and LeBron James, at the most exclusive nightclubs in the country. He was sitting courtside at Lakers games while decked out in designer clothes. Questions arose about where a 19-year-old college kid was getting this kind of money. So the NCAA began an investigation. Instead of fessing up and risking his eligibility for the upcoming college football season, Manziel and his camp came up with an intricate plan and story to cover up their illegal business operations. Manziel kept signing autographs and gave his grandfather the cash, and in return, Manziel received checks. They also spread the narrative that Manziel's family came from huge amounts of wealth due to a history in the oil trade, and Johnny was such a good actor that everyone fell for it. The NCAA suspended him for only half of the first game for inadvertent violation regarding the signing of certain autographs. Basically, the kid snuck his way out of the whole scandal, unscathed, and it only further inflated his ego. When Manziel returned to his sophomore season at Texas A&M, he was a changed man. The once bright-eyed and humble football player from a small town in Texas was now a big-time celebrity. The media's perception of him was shifted due to the belief that he grew up extremely wealthy. and there were more photos of him partying with celebrities circling around the internet than one could count. But Johnny didn't care. He was feeding the storylines. His money, celebrations, and trash talking were almost overshadowing his heroic play on the field. But it didn't matter. At this point, Manziel had already established himself as an NFL prospect and was more interested in leveraging his status to party like a rock star than he was committed to watching game film. His coaching staff had absolutely no control over his behavior, since his stardom was bringing in so much money for the program. Basically, Johnny was untouchable. His play was still electrifying, but the team wasn't able to replicate the success that they saw the previous season. Throughout the year, the Aggies lost all their games against ranked opponents en route to an 8-4 season. Eventually, they defeated Duke to win the Chick-fil-A Bowl. It was a disappointing season for a group that entered the year ranked number 7 in the country. But Manziel was on to bigger and better things. The following offseason was all about preparing for the NFL Draft. Leading up to the draft, Manziel was one of the most polarizing prospects available. On one hand, his talent was undeniable, but on the other hand, there were serious questions about his character and his willingness to fully devote himself to professional football. The NFL was not going to be as forgiving as his college team if he showed up hungover or didn't put in the necessary work to excel at the highest level. But the draft was essential to Manziel. If Manziel could earn himself a selection from one of the teams in the top 5, the signing bonus would be worth millions of dollars more than if he slipped. And as the draft gets deeper, the contracts that the players receive get smaller. So, Johnny, who had always been managed by his best friend, Nate Fitch, decided to get professional representation. He hired an agent named Eric Burkhart. Fitch, who had been by Manziel's side since day one, took the change in representation personally, and it led to the demise of their friendship. Meanwhile, Manziel's focus shifted towards the NFL Draft Combine. Burkhart's advice for Johnny was to stay completely out of the eyes of the media. No interviews, no public appearances, nothing. Just train hard every day and prepare for the Combine. And the plan was working to a T. All the chatter of Manziel's character flaws began to dissipate as media and fans began to daydream about what a grown and committed Johnny Football could potentially look like in an NFL offense. Many argued that Johnny didn't just have the on-field talent, that he also had the it factor, making him destined for stardom. Manziel was in the best shape of his life leading up to the Combine and was completely out of the public eye. Until one night, like a caged animal ready to let loose, temptation got the best of him. Johnny Manziel went on an epic party bender in which he reportedly indulged in liquor and hard drugs. He called Burkhart the next morning and let him know, "I'm never going to pass a drug test." The agent told him that he was going to have to skip the Combine, but Manziel disputed. He said that he had worked too hard not to show up and that he was eager to showcase his talents and fitness. He also claimed that he had been cheating his way through drug tests for 2 years at college. So Burkhart came up with an elaborate plan to get him in and out of the Combine as fast as possible. The plan he came up with involved showing off his skills, then receiving a phone call from his parents that his father was in the hospital, which would force him to leave the Combine early. In Burkhart's mind, the scheme was foolproof. All he needed was Manziel to go along with the plan. But instead, Johnny showed up to the Combine and wanted to go through the entire process. They managed to come up with a fake urine sample, and Johnny blew scouts away with his Combine results. He also nailed interviews and had the entire league believing that he was fully committed to developing professional habits as he transitioned to the NFL. On draft day, he slipped out of the top 10, but still managed to get drafted in the first round, 22nd overall by the Cleveland Browns. All things considered, it was a major success, and Johnny Football had every opportunity to fulfill his destiny as an NFL starting quarterback. The Browns had been lacking a star quarterback for decades, and the fan base was hoping that Johnny could be that guy. But as soon as Manziel showed up to camp, he was overwhelmed with symptoms of depression. He was no longer the alpha in the room, and was surrounded by some of the most talented players in the world. And unlike in college, these guys all had an extremely professional approach. For an expressive and free spirit like Johnny Football, it wasn't a natural fit. In training camp, he was given an iPad by his coaching staff with football footage and playbook details that he was expected to study. The device had a tracker that timed how much time Manziel devoted to watching film. Throughout the entire camp, Manziel's iPad read 000. Additionally, loads of party photos with Manziel front and center continued to circulate. One in particular was of Johnny holding a rolled up $20 bill in a bar bathroom. As game action began, his attitude wasn't showing signs of improvement. In a preseason game in August, he was fined $12,000 for giving one of his opponents the middle finger. When the regular season started, another quarterback named Brian Hoyer was chosen as the starter instead of Manziel. Later in the season, during a game against the Buffalo Bills, Manziel got a chance to play because Hoyer was underperforming. Manziel threw for 63 yards and scored his first NFL touchdown by running the ball into the end zone. However, the Browns still lost the game. Manziel got his first opportunity to start against the Cincinnati Bengals. Unfortunately, he didn't perform very well, completing only 10 of 18 passes and throwing 2 interceptions. The Bengals won 30-0. Then, in a game against the Carolina Panthers, Manziel started but had to leave the game due to a hamstring injury that ended his season 1 game early. One of his teammates told reporters that Manziel's rookie season was a 100% joke, and in all reality, the claim was tough to dispute. Following his rookie season, Johnny Manziel checked into a rehab program to confront some of the addiction issues that were limiting his ability to focus on football. When he was released, Manziel told the media, "I owe private apologies to a lot of people that I disappointed, but a very public one to the Browns organization and the fans that I let down. I take full responsibility for my actions, and it's my intention to work very hard to regain everyone's trust and respect." He was showing signs of being a changed man. Johnny announced that he was no longer going to be celebrating with his iconic money sign in an attempt to reinvent himself with a more professional public image. But the optimism was short-lived. In October, Manziel was found fighting with his girlfriend while speeding, and he had reportedly had a few drinks, though he wasn't legally charged. In spite of his poor behavior, the Browns were still committed to giving Manziel his opportunity. In November, he was given the starting job to run with, but after more party photos surfaced, he was buried in the depth chart. Eventually, he was given another shot to start, in which he showed glimpses of ability in a victory against the 49ers, but soon after, he was diagnosed with a concussion and was forced out of action. While concussed, Manziel flew to Las Vegas disguised as a man named Billy, where he gambled and partied the night away, missing his flight and even missing the Browns' final game of the season. Following his sophomore season, things spiraled downhill quickly for Manziel. In late January, Johnny Manziel faced allegations of assaulting his then-girlfriend, Colleen Crowley, during an incident at a Dallas hotel. She claimed he prevented her from leaving and threatened her. Following this incident, his agent, Eric Burkhart, dropped him after he refused to check himself back into rehab. Johnny seemed unfazed. He was too deep into drugs and partying by this point. The Cleveland Browns, witnessing the string of events, released Manziel from their team in March, making him a free agent. He hired a new agent, Drew Rosenhaus. Then, in April, Manziel was involved in a car accident in Los Angeles, but no injuries were reported. However, Rosenhaus terminated their professional relationship as well, expressing hope that Manziel would seek treatment. In late April, Manziel was indicted on an assault charge related to the January incident. He turned himself into the police in May and was ordered to have no contact with his ex-girlfriend and to stay away from firearms during the legal proceedings. It was a turbulent period in Johnny Manziel's life. He was spending millions of dollars partying, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and was reportedly contemplating suicide. At the time, Manziel was looking thin. He was approximately 30 pounds below his playing weight and had isolated himself from his friends and family. In 2017, Manziel attempted to clean up his act. He rehired Eric Burkhart as his agent and looked to pursue a comeback in football. He joined the Canadian Football League, where he signed with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but got traded to the Montreal Alouettes without ever receiving a start. There, he didn't have much success. After one season, he attempted to play in various development leagues in the United States, such as the AAF and the FCF, where he wasn't able to string together much success either. Now, Manziel is retired from football and is more focused on his mental and physical health than he is on any career opportunities. Though Johnny Manziel's NFL career was short-lived, he is still a cultural icon. Still, one has to ponder what his career could have been had he remained clean and disciplined. It's a story that ended before it even began. He does give us perspective regarding the struggles that are faced by people with addiction and mental health issues. No one can deny the talent that gave Manziel so much attention during his collegiate career, and that is something no one can take away from him.